Every confession begins long before it's spoken. The narrator says over static and city noise. It starts with the need to be understood. Detective Laura Keene sat in her apartment, sleepless. On her laptop, the scanned note Nancy left. Its handwriting had rhythm, steady, deliberate, but the spacing between letters was off. A pattern emerged only when she retyped the note in a monospaced font. A hidden code, subtle, embedded in the spaces. Deformed coordinates. Keene leaned back, stunned. The location pointed to an old payphone by the docks, long out of service but still standing. "You want to talk?" Keene whispered. "Fine, let's talk." Midnight, rain. Keene approached the payphone. It was dead, the receiver cold. Then her phone rang, blocked number. She answered. Nancy's voice, calm, low. "You followed the trail. Keene, you wanted me to." Nancy, "Maybe. Or maybe I wanted to see what kind of person chases ghosts." Keene, "You're not a ghost, Nancy. You're a survivor." Nancy, "Survivors don't leave bodies behind." Detective. Keene paused, not in accusation but in understanding. "You think you've balanced something. That pain can be traded for peace." Nancy, "Pain can't be traded, but it can be accounted for." There was silence. Just rain against metal. Keene, "You left that note. We both drown. What does that mean?" Nancy, "It means if you find out everything, you'll stop seeing me as guilty. You'll see me as you." And then the line went dead. Back at the precinct, Keene replayed the recording. She didn't tell her team how she'd gotten it, just said an anonymous source had come forward. She compared Nancy's coded message to older missing person reports. Every clue seemed to carry a second meaning. A map of trauma written in invisible ink. "Justice isn't about what's proven," Keene murmured to herself. "It's about what we're willing to understand." Her partner leaned in the doorway. "You're getting too close, Laura. You look at her like she's the victim." "Maybe she was," Keene replied quietly. "And maybe that's the problem." Meanwhile, Nancy stood in an abandoned art studio she'd rented under another alias. The walls were covered with sketches, outlines of faces, some crossed out, others unfinished. In the center, a single object sat under a lamp. A small wooden box labeled Truth. She opened it slowly. Inside were pieces of the past. A police badge that wasn't hers, a photo of her mother, a USB drive, and a letter addressed to Laura Keene. She sealed the box, placed it on the windowsill, and whispered, "If she's brave enough to look inside, she'll know everything." Then she walked away. The next morning, a package arrived at the precinct. No return address. Inside the wooden box, the letter read, "You wanted a confession. Here it is. I survived what no one believed. I became what no one expected. And I am not asking for forgiveness, only recognition. You think this story is about murder. It's not. It's about consequence." Keene looked up from the page, her reflection caught in the one-way glass of the interrogation room. For the first time, she realized the story wasn't hers to solve. It was Nancy's to end. Every investigator seeks truth, the narrator concludes. But sometimes, truth seeks the investigator. Every secret has an audience, the narrator says over the hum of a loading bar. Detective Laura Keene sat alone in the evidence room, headphones on, eyes fixed on the flickering monitor. The USB opened to a single folder labeled Meadowbrook 1989 to 2005. Inside were video files, therapy sessions, police interviews, and one grainy home video of a birthday party. At first, she thought it was unrelated material from another case. Then she recognized the voice of the child in the footage. Nancy. The recording showed her at 8 years old, shy, cautious, answering questions from a school counselor. Counselor, what do you want to be when you grow up? Nancy, invisible. Invisible people don't get hurt. Keene paused the video. Silence pressed around her. Sometimes evidence isn't proof of guilt, the narrator murmurs. It's proof of survival. At the end of the folder sat a text file titled, If You're Her. It read, Detective Keene, I've seen the reports. I know how you chase truth. like it's the only way to stay alive. But truth has a cost. If you open the next file, you'll carry it too. Keene hesitated, then double-clicked. A list appeared, 5 names. The same ones linked to the mysterious deaths. Next to each, scanned pages from old police complaints, all marked unsubstantiated. They were records of women who had reported the same men years ago. None of their cases had ever gone to trial. The system failed her, Keene whispered, and she built her own. She closed her eyes, the weight of the revelation settling on her shoulders. Nancy was now living under yet another alias in Portland, working in a small bookstore by the waterfront. She kept to herself, read often, and avoided news headlines. But she knew the detective would eventually find the USB. She was counting on it. "You needed to see the whole picture," she said quietly while shelving books. "Now you'll decide whether the frame was justice or revenge." At the precinct, Keene faced an impossible choice. Turn the drive over as evidence, which would expose Nancy and reopen every closed file, or seal it away, letting the truth live only in her own conscience. Her partner noticed her hesitation. "Whatever's on that drive, it's haunting you." "It's supposed to," Keene said. That night she drove to the river, the same one that ran past Meadowbrook. She watched the current carry scraps of driftwood out to sea. She took the USB from her pocket, turned it in her hand, the light catching the metal like a coin waiting to be flipped. "Justice or mercy," she said aloud. "Pick one." She didn't throw it in. Not yet. Nancy locked the bookstore at closing and stepped into the fog. Somewhere, she believed, Laura Keene was making a decision that would decide both their futures. 2 survivors, bound by opposite sides of the same truth, the narrator says. One carries the evidence, the other, the echo. As the screen fades, the faint buzz of a phone vibrates on Keene's dashboard. An encrypted message from an unknown number. "You understand now. That's enough." Keene smiles faintly, not victory, recognition. Fade to black. Some truths can't be buried, the narrator says as early morning news voices overlap on radios. They just wait for someone brave or reckless enough to dig them up. Detective Laura Keene arrived at the precinct to find chaos. An internal affairs memo had leaked. Unsubmitted evidence connected to Meadowbrook case located in Keene's possession. Someone knew about the USB. Her captain confronted her behind closed doors. "Captain, you withholding something, Laura?" Keene, "I'm protecting a source." "Captain, you're protecting a ghost. Hand it over." She didn't. She asked for personal leave instead. By noon, an anonymous podcast uploaded a new episode. The Ghost of Meadowbrook, the missing girl who fought back. Clips from the same therapy recordings Keene had watched now played under dramatic music. The host's voice claimed the files came from an inside source within law enforcement. Keene froze at her desk. Someone had copied the drive before she did. "Control is an illusion," the narrator murmurs, "especially when the truth learns how to speak for itself." Across the country, Nancy heard the podcast through a customer's phone speaker. Her name wasn't mentioned, but the details were too close. She watched the customer leave, then quietly locked the door and lowered the blinds. "It's out now," she said to the empty shop. "No more shadows." She opened her laptop to find hundreds of new messages in a dormant inbox tied to her old alias. Some were supportive, others cruel. She deleted them all and wrote a single email addressed to Laura Keene at citip.gov. "It's already bigger than both of us. You can choose what you do next. But don't try to save me." She hit send. News vans camped outside the precinct by evening. Talk shows debated whether the Meadowbrook vigilante was real or a myth. Some called her a monster, others called her a hero. Keene sat alone in her car, listening to commentators argue over a woman they'd never met. Then her phone buzzed. An unknown number again. Nancy's voice, quiet. "I didn't leak it. I trusted you to decide." Keene, "It doesn't matter now. They've decided for us." Nancy, "Then stop chasing justice. Start defining it." The line cut. Keene leaned back, eyes closed, torn between fury and awe. Later that night, Keene appeared on a local interview show. When the host asked if the Meadowbrook files were authentic, she answered carefully, "What they prove isn't important. What they reveal is that our system fails people long before the evidence does." Somewhere in Portland, Nancy watched the same broadcast on a flickering TV in the bookstore's back room. She turned up the volume as Keene looked directly into the camera. "Keene, if she's out there, I hope she knows she was heard." Nancy smiled faintly and turned off the set. "Hearing's enough," she whispered. "The world loves a mystery." The narrator begins over the flash of headlines, but it loves a confession even more. Within 48 hours, the story exploded. Cable pundits debated Nancy Carter's existence. Online forums mapped her supposed movements like a treasure hunt. A true crime streaming service announced the Meadowbrook Files. Detective Laura Keene watched the chaos from her living room TV. The anchor said her name now almost as often as Nancy's. She muted the sound and whispered, "You wanted to vanish, Nancy. Now you're everywhere." In Portland, Nancy felt the same exposure in reverse. Her bookstore filled with curious strangers, some asking about the missing girl, others pretending to shop while filming her on phones. She couldn't tell who believed and who hunted. That evening, she found a small GPS tag taped under her car's bumper. No police markings, no serial number, just a blinking red light. She crushed it under her heel, looked at the skyline, and sighed. They always think ghosts stand still. Keene received a call from an assistant U.S. attorney. "If she reaches out again, we can guarantee immunity in exchange for testimony. The Bureau wants the inside story before Hollywood gets it." Keene hesitated. "She's not a headline." "Then make sure she doesn't become one," the attorney replied and hung up. Keene stared at her reflection in the dark computer screen. Somewhere between duty and empathy, she'd lost her footing. An email arrived from a burner address. ghostreply@riseupmail.net. Contained a single audio file. When played, a modulated voice spoke. "The question isn't what I did. It's what no one else did when they could have." Keene recognized Nancy's cadence even through the distortion. She realized the recording was recent. A message meant for the public, not her. Nancy was controlling the narrative now, turning myth into message. "You can't disappear and lead a revolution at the same time," Keene muttered. "But you're trying." That night, 2 screens glowed in different cities. Keene's laptop streamed a live interview where experts dissected the Meadowbrook vigilante. Nancy's old-school photo appeared beside Keene's current badge photo, 2 sides of a split frame. In the bookstore, Nancy flipped the sign to closed and whispered, "They finally see us both." In her apartment, Keene whispered the same words at the same moment. Across the distance, neither knew. Exposure changes shape with every retelling. The narrator closes. For one woman, it meant freedom through legend. For the other, captivity inside truth. When truth finally breaks the surface, the narrator says over a sunrise time-lapse, "It doesn't free you. It demands payment." Nancy awoke to pounding on her apartment door. Not police, reporters. Flashes burst through the peephole as she backed away, breathing slow and shallow. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Mentions, articles, podcasts. Each headline used her name like ownership. Nancy Carter? Angel or Avenger? She opened her laptop and read one final email from an unknown sender. "You can't keep both lives. Choose." Detective Keene sat in an empty cafe at dawn, waiting. Across from her sat Deputy Director Monroe, representing a quiet federal task force. "Monroe, we don't want her arrested. We want her contained." Keene, "Contained?" Monroe, "If she comes forward, she becomes a symbol. If she disappears, she becomes a legend. Either way, she's louder than the system." Keene's jaw tightened. "Keene, you're afraid of her voice." Monroe, "No. We're afraid of what it exposes about us." He slid a folder across the table, a proposed immunity deal. All Keene had to do was get Nancy to sign. Nancy watched the city through her bookstore window, hoodie pulled tight, rain streaking the glass. Inside, the news played on the old TV she never unplugged. Sources confirm the FBI may be in contact with a key witness connected to the Meadowbrook case. Her reflection wavered in the glass. Two versions of herself. The broken girl who survived, and the woman the world turned into a myth. She picked up a burner phone and dialed a memorized number. Nancy. Laura. Keen. Quietly. You shouldn't be calling. Nancy. Neither should you still care. Keen. They want you to surrender. They'll protect you if you sign the deal. Nancy. Protection from who? Them or me? Silence. Keen. From becoming something you can't undo. Nancy. I already am. The line clicked dead. That night, Keen drove to an abandoned bridge overlooking the river, a place Nancy had mentioned once in an old therapy tape. The rain was relentless, headlights blurring through mist. Nancy stepped from the shadows, soaked but calm. Keen, you're really here. Nancy, I never left. You just started seeing me. Keen, if you go back with me, I can protect you. Nancy, if I go back, I lose the story. And maybe the story is the only part of me that ever mattered. Keen held out the envelope, the immunity deal. Nancy took it, looked at it, then let the rain wash the ink away. Nancy, you don't save ghosts, detective. You learn to live with them. Keen, then what now? Nancy, now, you forget you ever found me. She walked into the fog until her outline dissolved. Days later, Keen sat before a federal hearing. Did you ever make contact with Nancy Carter? She hesitated, glancing at the cameras. No, she said finally. I never found her. The officials nodded, unaware that Nancy was watching from a motel room in another state. Alive, invisible, free again. She closed the laptop and whispered, "Thank you." Time doesn't erase stories, the narrator begins. It just lets them change shape. It's been 5 years since the last sighting of Nancy Carter. The world moved on, at least on the surface. True crime documentaries recycled her case every season. Podcasts debated whether she ever existed at all. In a quiet town in Oregon, Laura Keen had retired from the force. She taught criminal psychology at a community college, her badge locked away in a desk drawer. Her lectures warned about the cost of obsession. No one realized the warning was personal. That morning, her inbox pinged with a message from an unknown sender. Subject: It's starting again. Attached, a photo. It showed a wall covered with newspaper clippings. Nancy's name circled in red. A new headline at the center reading, "Vigilante Copycat Strikes in Portland." At a downtown cafe, a young journalist named Maya Ruiz scrolled through an encrypted chat thread. Her latest article, "The Ghost Returns," had gone viral overnight. Anonymous users claimed to have seen Nancy older, colder, leading others. Maya didn't believe in ghosts, but she believed in patterns. And this one felt deliberate. Her phone buzzed. Private number. Voice. Disguised, "You're chasing someone who doesn't want to be found." Maya, "Who is this?" Voice. "Someone who once did the same thing you're doing. And it cost me everything." Pause. Maya, "Detective Keen?" The line went dead. Keen returned to her home office that night and pulled out her old case files. Half the pages were yellowed. Half were photocopies of evidence that never officially existed. She studied the handwriting in the photo on the clippings on the walls. It wasn't Nancy's, but whoever wrote it knew the case intimately. In a drawer sat a weathered USB drive, the one Nancy had sent years ago, containing her therapy recordings. Keen hadn't listened since the hearing. Until now. Nancy's recorded voice. "If anyone ever hears this, know that the story was never about revenge. It was about being seen." The file ended with static, then a short beep like Morse code. Keen frowned. It wasn't in the original recording. She decoded the sound through an app. It spelled one word: return. At the Portland crime scene, police tape fluttered in the rain. A graffiti tag marked the alley wall. NC//Justice Lives. A copycat, not a killer, someone making a statement. Maya watched from across the street, notebook in hand. She spotted a figure standing under a broken streetlight, a woman in a gray coat, face hidden by a scarf. When their eyes met, Maya froze. The woman gave a subtle nod, then walked away. Later, reviewing her camera footage, Maya zoomed in on a reflection in a shop window. The woman's eyes looked familiar, aged, but unmistakable. Nancy Carter. That night, Maya received an email from an encrypted address, ghostcircle@protonmail.com. Inside was one line: "You've been chosen to tell the ending." Below it, a meeting location in the Oregon mountains. And a date: tomorrow. At the same time, Keen received the same email, but hers added another line: "Bring the drive." She stared at it for a long moment before whispering, "You're pulling me back, Nancy." Legends never end. The narrator begins. They wait until someone needs them again. The road to the Oregon mountains was narrow, wet, and silent. Maya Ruiz gripped the steering wheel, following coordinates from the email. A fog rolled in, swallowing the headlights. At the top of a ridge stood an abandoned lodge, boarded but intact. Its windows glowed faintly. Someone was already inside. Maya hesitated, then stepped out, recorder in hand. Maya into mic, October 17th. Location unknown. If this recording's found, tell them, I went looking for the truth. Inside, Detective Laura Keen sat by a dim fire, her coat still damp from the rain. She looked older, calmer, until the door creaked. Keen, you're early. Maya, you got the same message? Keen, yeah. I thought I was walking into a trap. Maya, you still might be. Before Keen could answer, a voice came from the shadows. Nancy, then it's a familiar feeling for both of us. Nancy stepped into the firelight. Her hair was streaked with gray now, her face lined but resolute. Time hadn't erased her, it had hardened her. Keen rose slowly, almost reverent. Keen, you really came back. Nancy, I never left. You just stopped listening. Nancy led them deeper into the lodge. The room was covered in photographs, red string connecting each one. But instead of victims or suspects, the images were of survivors, women, men, children, anonymous faces connected through old case files. Nancy, the world made me a story so they could stop hearing the rest. But the real ghosts are still here. Every face on this wall was left behind the same way I was. Maya's recorder light blinked red. Maya, why me? Why now? Nancy, because stories outlive evidence. And you're good at telling them. She turned to Keen. Nancy, and you, detective, you've been protecting the truth for too long. I need you to release it. Keen frowned. Keen, what are you planning? Nancy, not revenge. Reform. I built something, an invisible network. We find the ones the system forgot, and we teach them how to fight back without becoming me. Keen opened the envelope she'd brought, the old USB drive. Keen, this is what they still fear. The raw truth. Your voice, unedited. Nancy, then let's give it to someone who won't twist it. Nancy placed the drive in Maya's hand. Nancy, you'll decide how it ends. You can publish it all or you can bury it again. Either way, you'll own the story now. Maya looked between them. Maya, why trust me? Nancy, because you still believe truth can save people. I used to. The fire burned low. Nancy stepped toward the door, her silhouette framed by snowlight. Keen, where will you go? Nancy, somewhere the story can't find me. Keen, it always will. Nancy, then maybe it'll find someone worth listening to this time. She turned to Maya one last time. Nancy, make sure they understand I wasn't a monster, just a mirror. And then she was gone, into the fog, leaving only her shadow and her story behind. Weeks later, Maya sat in her newsroom. On her monitor glowed the final headline draft. The Ghost Circle. The woman the system created. She hovered over the publish button. In another window, a live news feed showed Laura Keen testifying before a congressional committee about systemic abuse cover-ups. 2 women, 2 truths, 1 legacy. Maya took a deep breath and clicked publish. Truth moves faster than light. The narrator opens, because once it's seen, it can't be unseen. Maya Ruiz's article, The Ghost Circle, the woman the system created, dropped at midnight. By dawn, it had over 2 million reads. By noon, it became the most shared investigative feature in the country. Television anchors read excerpts aloud. Social media split in half, some calling Nancy Carter a hero, others demanding her arrest. But one line from Maya's piece went viral. Nancy Carter wasn't a monster. She was a mirror, and the reflection terrified us. In Washington, D.C., a Senate hearing convened within days. Detective Laura Keene sat under bright lights, a witness again, this time not to a crime, but to a pattern. Senator, you withheld evidence that could have led to Nancy Carter's capture. Keene, I withheld it because it was never meant to prove guilt. It was meant to show how guilt was created. Senator, you're saying the system made her? Keene, no. The silence did. The room fell quiet. Somewhere far from the cameras, Nancy listened through a radio, hidden in a small coastal cabin. For the first time in years, she smiled without sadness. Emails flooded Maya's inbox, not from journalists, but from survivors. Each one carried a variation of the same sentence. Because of your story, I'm not afraid to tell mine. She scrolled through hundreds, overwhelmed. A message appeared from an encrypted address she hadn't seen in weeks. ghostcircle@protonmail.com. It read simply, "They're listening now. Don't stop." Attached was a photo. The same wall of survivor portraits, but expanded: new faces, new stories, new hope. Not everyone celebrated. Certain networks called it propaganda, a glorification of crime. A cable anchor sneered into the camera. We're letting criminals become folk heroes. What's next? Statues. Keene turned off the TV. She wasn't surprised. Power never likes reflection. But she also knew the tide had turned. The Justice Department announced a new division for reviewing cold assault cases. They called it Project Meadowbrook. Keene didn't need to ask who inspired the name. Weeks later, a global podcast announced a live broadcast titled Voices from the Ghost Circle. Maya would host. Anonymous survivors from around the world would speak. And at the end of the episode, a final pre-recorded voice would air. One the producers claimed was Nancy Carter herself. The world tuned in. Nancy's recorded voice, soft, steady. You can't erase what was done, but you can refuse to let silence write the ending. If you hear this, know that justice isn't revenge. It's recognition. And I'm finally seen. A pause. Then the broadcast faded to black. The next morning, people left candles, flowers, and handwritten letters on courthouse steps across the country. No monuments, no statues, just light, thousands of small flames burning in silence. Keene walked past one vigil, hands in her pockets. She noticed a folded note among the candles addressed to the detective who listened. Inside, in careful handwriting, it read, "Thank you for hearing her." She smiled faintly and looked up at the rising sun. Far away, on a quiet coast, Nancy watched the same sunrise. Sometimes, the narrator says softly, the only way to return from the dead is to tell the truth. Fade to black. 5 years have passed since the Ghost Circle broadcast. The world moved forward, but not the same way. True crime shows now end with resource links for survivors. New laws bear the name Carter-Keene Reform Act. And somewhere along the Oregon coast, a small literacy foundation quietly operates under the initials NC. Its founder is never seen. Only the staff, mostly women rebuilding their lives, speak of a mentor who sends them books and notes written on old typewriter paper. Each one ends with the same line: keep telling the truth, even when they stop listening. Detective Laura Keene, now a professor, stands before a packed auditorium at a university in Seattle. The lecture topic, the ethics of justice. Behind her, projected on the screen, are 2 images, her police badge and a single typewritten quote. Justice is not punishment. It's acknowledgement. Keene to the class. When we fail to hear the broken, we build the next crime ourselves. One woman's story showed us that silence can be as deadly as the act it hides. A student raises a hand. Student: do you believe Nancy Carter is still alive? Keen smiles faintly. Keen: I believe some stories don't die. They just change narrators. The class falls silent. That evening, Maya Ruiz receives a brown envelope with no return address. Inside, a faded photograph of a beach, footprints leading toward the tide. On the back, typed words: "It's quieter here. Keep them talking." N. Maya sets it down on her desk beside framed newspaper clippings, the first edition of her book, The Ghost Circle, and a candle burned halfway through. She picks up her recorder. Maya into mic. Chapter 20, Legacy. When truth survives its teller, that's not a tragedy. That's immortality. The camera pans across a quiet shoreline. A woman in her late 40s walks barefoot near the surf, her hair hidden under a hat. She picks up a seashell, tucks it into her coat, and looks toward the horizon. We never see her face clearly, but her voice, calm, older, steady, carries over the wind. Nancy voiceover. They say when you vanish, the world forgets you. Maybe that's the point. I wanted them to remember what happened, not who I was. She stops, watching a group of children reading on the sand. One of them laughs, holding up a book with a familiar embossed logo. NC Foundation. Nancy smiles softly. Nancy voiceover. For the first time, I don't need to hide. I don't need revenge. I don't even need to be heard. I just need the silence to mean something different. That night, a post appears on the official Ghost Circle page. A simple black screen with white text. Stories end. Voices don't. Below it, an audio clip, the final message. Nancy's voice, recorded. If you're listening, you've survived something. That makes you part of the circle now. Don't wait for justice to find you. Build it. The clip ends with the faint sound of ocean waves. Legacy isn't what we leave behind. The narrator closes gently. It's who learns to speak because we did. The camera lingers on the shoreline again. Empty now except for the waves erasing footprint. TS one by one. Then fade to black. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, and share.